Pokémon Scarlet and Violet online battles can be complex battles of wits, where each move you make needs to be carefully planned out if you want to beat your opponent. But what if we forget about all that, and instead we just throw explosions at the opponent non-stop? Well, boy do I have the team for you. Here's what the team looks like. Each member has a highly specialized role in the team that I'll go over. But first, let me explain the plan. Explosion is a move with a base power of 250, which is, if you aren't aware, a lot. Not only that, but it hits all other Pokemon on the field, so in a double battle, you get more bang for your buck since you're hitting two Pokemon at once. Big downside, of course, is that it also means that you hit your ally Pokemon. That, and of course, the user faints after using the move. Now, onto the team, we have two Pokemon that know the move. The first is Garganical. He's our big boy. Not only does he have the highest base attack out of all the Pokemon that learn Explosion, with a whopping 100 base attack, but we have also trained him up to have even more attack through EVs. And the item that he has is the Choice Band, which further increases physical attack damage. Not only that, but he also has the normal Terra type, which means that if we choose to terrestrialize our Garganical into normal, by using the normal type move Explosion, it will do even more damage thanks to the same type attack bonus. Next is Fortress, which is also an exploder. But instead of focusing on pure damage, Fortress is built to survive. This is to ensure that it can at least get the explosion off no matter what. It has Sturdy to prevent it getting one shot from full health just like Garganical, but it also has a Citrus Berry to help it survive any possible follow-up hits, as well as having high defenses and special defenses and HP. But these two aren't the only exploders on the team though, because there is a third Pokemon, which is Grafaiai. It doesn't necessarily have the move Explosion, but it does have the move Copycat, a status move that copies the most recently used move. And because of its ability Prankster, technically speaking, since Copycat is a status move, it gets to go first when you use the move. This is where the final piece of the puzzle comes into play. Rabsca. Not only can it set up Trick Room, which reverses the turn order, allowing our slower Pokemon to move first, but it also has the hidden ability Telepathy, which means that it cannot be harmed by your ally Pokemon. Not only that, but it has access to the new move Revival Blessing, which restores a Pokemon to half health that has been KO'd previously. A very powerful move that of course is balanced by only having one usage or 1 PP. But because we have given it the Leper Berry, after using Revival Blessing once, we get a second use of it, allowing us to bring back one of our exploders and use them once again. But enough talking. I think the best way to show you how this team works in the ideal way is to go into a match and show you how these four work. So here we lead with both Grafaiai and Fortress, and in the back we have Garganical and Rabsca. So they lead with Hydreigon and Salamence. So notably, Salamence is actually a dark type, which is kind of scary for reasons I'll get into later. But first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to use Explosion with Fortress, and to protect Grafaiai from not taking any damage, we're going to use Protect on the Grafaiai. Now, the reason why I say Hydreigon is a bit of a scary thing is because since it's a dark type, it doesn't really matter anymore because he's actually going to terrestrialize into Fire type. But if he remained a dark type Hydreigon, what that would mean is that when Grafaiai uses Copycat, technically speaking, because Hydreigon would be a dark type, Prankster, the ability that lets him move first, means that any move that Grafaiai uses actually will not affect opposing dark types. So, although Explosion is a normal type move, normally it is only resisted or not effective against ghost types. But Dark as well now is an issue when Grafaiai uses it. So here we can see that Hydreigon does use Heat Wave, and because of Fortress's ability, Sturdy, it lives on 1 HP, and the Citrus Berry allows it to regain a little bit of health, so it gets up to 46 health, which doesn't look like a lot, but even though he has so little health, again, Fortress is built very, very, very bulky, which is why when Salamence uses Earthquake, it hardly does any damage and Fortress is able to survive, getting off an Earthquake here. So now you might think, wow, that's actually not that much damage. Fortress only did like, what, half health to both of them. But remember, Fortress is probably the weakest exploder on the team. His only goal is to just get off that first explosion, because now we can send in Rabsca. And with Rabsca out on the field, we can use Trick Room, and our Grafaiai can now use Copycat. And because of Prankster, he moves first, and since Hydreigon is now a Fire type, the Explosion can connect and do damage to both the Hydreigon and the Salamence, and it has Life Orb plus a bit more damage, so it gets the KO on both of them, wiping the entire field from the opposing team. Doing no damage to Rabsca as well because of the ability Telepathy. And now, because the Hydreigon and Salamence are both out, this means that Rabsca is free to use Trick Room, so we get it up for pretty much free. But again, if that Hydreigon was still a dark type and he didn't terrestrialize, that would not have worked because Explosion would have done no damage because it would be not effective, or it wouldn't have any effect due to the Prankster ability. So now we can bring in Garganical, our big boy. who has arguably the biggest exploder on the team. The opponent sends out a Hawlucha and their opposing Garganical. So, remember, we now have Trick Room up on the team. And here's the brilliant thing about Revival Blessing. So we use it with Rabsca first, and our Garganicals can simply explode with a Terrestrialization as well to get some extra damage from the stab. Now, I said it earlier, but when I selected the move Revival Blessing, the nice thing is that it doesn't ask you which Pokemon you want to revive just yet. And the way that the speed is set up in this team, under Trick Room, Garganical is the slowest one. So technically speaking, Garganical will move first. And after that, only then will our Rabsca move. So here we can terrestrialize our Garganical into normal type, and because of Trick Room, it moves first, and here comes the explosion, and it does, let's see, doesn't damage the Rabsca, and it is an instant one-hit KO on the Hawlucha, and we almost pick up the double KO on Garganical with a critical hit. So Garganical obviously faints because of that. Now it might look bad because, you know, we only have one Pokemon left against the opposing Garganical, but once his Garganical moves, he won't KO us because he uses Earthquake, and Rabsca is able to survive that. We can now use Revival Blessing, and only now, once the move actually lands, do you get to choose which Pokemon you can revive. So, we can bring back the Pokemon that we just sacrificed in our Garganical. And of course, we have the Leper Berry restore our PP, so we get to do it once more next turn. So this is also nice for, in case some reason, you know, you want to use Revival Blessing right at the start of the match, and you also want to explode. So that allows you to instantly revive someone. You don't have to wait till a Pokemon is already KO'd to select the move at least. So we can just have Garganical clean up with a Hammer Arm, and, you know, we use Revival Blessing just in case something bad happens. But that is the ideal way that this team works, with nothing but explosions. It does seem very strong, but like I said, with the Hydreigon, there are quite a few ways that this can get hard countered. Namely, Psychic Terrain as well. Anything that prevents the priority move, which is from the Grafaiai, because Psychic Terrain obviously prevents priority moves attacking. I know Armatail is also a thing like that on Farigiraf. Of course, you have, like I said, the Dark types, which are also not effective because of Prankster. Then there's, of course, the actual moves like Protect and Wide Guard. Protect, obviously, because, you know, it protects them from any damage. Wide Guard specifically is a lot worse because of the fact that it is a repeatable move. You don't have to worry about missing a Wide Guard. You can always use it constantly. So if they know that you're going to try and explode, they can just spam Wide Guard. Protect, however, is a little bit easier to try and work around because if they do use Protect, then that means that they can't attack themselves. So you can maybe get a setup as well with Trick Room with the other Pokemon, and or revive them as well if it's a Rabsca out, and they just have to hope that it doesn't work, right? So let's have another example here though, where what happens if you don't have the exploding team, and so we have the Annihilate and Houndstone in the back as well. Another issue is, of course, Ghost types, I should mention as well, because of course Explosion does not work against Ghost types. So when we lead with Annihilate here, we can have, you can see there's a Psychic Surge, and also Meowscarada is a Dark type, so it doesn't really, the original team would not have worked here, but the Annihilate and the Rabsca will do perfectly fine here with the Garganical and the Houndstone in the back. So Annihilate has a way to KO itself as well, not really like Explosion, but it's a Final Gambit. Basically what the move does is it does damage equal to Annihilate's current HP, which is 185 right now, at max health. And Annihilate also has Choice Scarf and is very speedy, so it is almost guaranteed to go first most of the time. So you can pretty much pick up a guaranteed KO. So we do that onto the Meowscarada right here, the threatening damage dealer, which allows Rabsca to go next, essentially for free. But they set up a Trick Room, and so we're actually going to cancel out the Trick Room, which actually isn't that bad. Because Annihilate is so fast that it kind of wants to not have Trick Room up, so it's kind of nice that we cancel out their Trick Room. So next up we can bring in our own Garganical. Because of course they're trying to go for a very slow team, right? So our Garganical isn't that scared in this position. So they bring out an Armarouge, and of course again, they still have the Psychic Terrain out. So now this turn, they don't have anything that can be weak to Explosion. In theory, they could have Protect and they could have Wide Guard, but maybe they don't know, so I can use Explosion with Garganical and Revival Blessing with the Rabsca. He's going to Terrestrialize here, but I'm pretty sure he Terrestrializes his Armarouge, and that is going to be a Dark type missile. So again, another issue that would have happened for a possible copycat Grafaiai, where it wouldn't have worked on the Dark type here. But of course, we are going to Terrestrialize ourselves and have our normal Garganical to do huge damage. But also, the other nice thing about Houndstone in the back, I'll say now, is that Houndstone's ability, Last Respect, or rather its attacking move, Lost Respect. It starts off with 50 base power, but it gets 50 more power every time a Pokemon faints. Notably, the way I phrase that, every time a Pokemon faints, it's not for every KO'd Pokemon. That means that if a Pokemon gets KO'd and you revive it with Revival Blessing, that 50 attack is still added onto Lost Respect. So in theory, if all of your Pokemon are KO'd with using Revival Blessing twice, that means that you could have, I think about like what, 5 stacks of KO'd Pokemon. So that means 250 extra base power. So you have a 300 base power move on Houndstone potentially. But of course, there we have Explosion picking up the double KO onto both the Indeedee and the Armarouge, wiping their board pretty much cleanly. And because of the fact that we don't have Trick Room up, so faster Pokemon still move first, that means that we can now actually switch in our Annihilate as opposed to our Houndstone. But don't worry, I will have a Houndstone video or a Houndstone match coming up right after this to showcase the power of the Houndstone. So he brings out his King Gambit, obviously a very, very slow Pokemon, which is nice that we don't have Trick Room up. So Annihilate will obviously be able to outspeed it, so we can just select Close Combat and do big damage onto that King Gambit. And our Rapska can of course use Revival Blessing as well. Notably, you can see as well, Rapska has Memento. So technically speaking, every single Pokemon on this team, other than Houndstone, has a way of KOing itself. So it really feeds into the possibility of a Houndstone sweep. But yeah, there's the Close Combat, and we beat this guy once again with our Annihilate, as opposed to only Explosions, although we did have some help with the Gorganical. Next up here is that Houndstone video I was talking about, or Houndstone match. So we can lead with Annihilate and Rapska first, again, with Houndstone and Gorganical in the back. Notably, they have some annoying Pokemon. In fact, they lead with the one right away, Mimikyu, because of course, it is not only is a ghost type, but it has Disguise, so the first instance of damage is not effective against it. But our Annihilate can be fast, it can use Final Gambit, and we can pretty much guarantee a KO onto the Dragonite. So we use that, and we immediately Trick Room as well, because our next two Pokemon, of course, that we're going to switch in, either Gorganical or Houndstone, are both very slow, so Trick Room would be quite beneficial for us. So Final Gambit goes off, and it is an instant KO against the Dragonite, removing a threat from the board completely. Again, it's also a nice thing to just instantly KO the damage dealer, so it almost guarantees that your Rapska will be able to get a turn off, unless they have two very offensive Pokemon right off the start. For example, Mimikyu almost KOing my Rapska. So we get the Trick Room off, and now we can bring in a slow Pokemon and have them move first. I opt to bring in Gorganical, but obviously I'm not going to explode because, like I said, Mimikyu, not only does it have a ghost typing, so Explosion is pointless, but also it has a Disguise that I really want to break through. So he sends out a Gyarados with Intimidate, so that is kind of annoying, but it's not too bad, because again, a Gorganical, in this scenario, we don't really care about exploding, because as you can see there, it has no effect on the Mimikyu. So instead, what I go for is a Rock Slide, just to break the Disguise on the Mimikyu, and also to get some chip damage onto the Gyarados, while also using Revival Blessing to bring back that Annihilate. Obviously, Gyarados protects, so that's not ideal, and of course, as well, as our luck would have it, I'm pretty sure the Mimikyu avoids the attack as well, so pretty much a nothing turn here. I may as well have used Explosion there, right? Gyarados protects itself, Mimikyu takes no damage, it's all the same thing. But it does let us stall out another turn though, and get a Revival Blessing onto the Annihilate. Remember, we have one KO'd Pokemon so far, Annihilate. That is a plus 50 bonus damage onto Lost Respects. Mimikyu, however, does sort of reverse the Trick Room, which is kind of annoying, but I mean, it's good that we have Annihilate in the back though, so we do still have a fast answer here. Of course, since Gorganical has Choice Band, we are forced to just use Rock Slide once again to try and break that Disguise. And also, we're going to try and use Trick Room to set that back up for our Houndstone at the end. Mimikyu does double into the Gorganical though, so that kind of sucks, but it's okay. This means that our Rapska is able to at least survive, since it wasn't attacked, and get off the Trick Room though. So once we bring in our next Pokemon, which is going to be Houndstone, which is a very slow Pokemon, now it has the possibility to move first at least. We do have to be very careful though, because of course with the Mimikyu and the Gyarados there, they have quite the offensive prowess against this Houndstone, specifically being a ghost type. So what I do is I actually terrestrialize my Houndstone, if I'm not too mistaken. But yeah, remember now we have plus 2 Feints, so that is a plus 100 damage onto Lost Respect, so it does 150 base power. We of course are going to terrestrialize into Fairy type just to get rid of that ghost typing. Fairy typing does help for the Play Rough, but it doesn't really matter, because even if Play Rough was super effective against one of these Pokemon, eventually, Lost Respects having such high base power from all the feints will actually out-damage it, even with a super effective buff from the Play Rough. So we can get off a Rival Blessing yet again and revive our Garganical. So now we have all 4 of our Pokemon back up full health again, or not full health, but alive again. Houndstone can of course use Lost Respect to break that Disguise in the Mimikyu. And now because of this Fairy Terror, the Shadow Claw does very little damage to the Houndstone, as does the Crunch from the Gyarados. Of course, if I had not Terrored into Fairy, that probably would have been a dead Houndstone. So, Houndstone can once again use Lost Respects. And here is the nice thing. Rapska has used Trick Room, Rapska has used its True Revival Blessings. The last thing left is either Struggle Bug or Memento. Struggle Bug doesn't do much damage, but Memento is nice because not only does it reduce Gyarados' attacks sharply, it also KOs the Rapska. But of course, Gyarados protects here, so we don't get that just yet. But it is a nice way to get another KO on yourself and have Houndstone get another stack of plus 50 for Lost Respects. So you can see here, Lost Respects goes and does an instant, well not really instant, but a KO onto the Mimikyu. And the next Pokemon, of course, is just going to suffer the same fate. Tinkaton. Tinkaton, of course, is a bit scary because of the Steel typing against the Houndstone, but again, under Trick Room, Houndstone is going to move first so we can take out the immediate threat Tinkaton. And you can see it's not even super effective, but because of how much bonus damage is on this Houndstone's Lost Respect, it is going to do pretty much a 1-hit KO. Especially now with the Rapska using Memento, this is going to be yet another stack of plus 50 base power onto the Houndstone's Lost Respects. And this also means that Gyarados, for whatever reason, if it has something very damaging, it can't do too much damage to the Houndstone once the Rapska goes down. So there, we have another 1-hit KO on the Tinkaton from Lost Respects. And Gyarados is going to try and use Crunch, but not being effective, and also now with its attack dropped, it does basically no damage whatsoever, so we can send in an Annihilate. Get ready in case for whatever reason Trick Room expires and he's able to take out my Houndstone. And so now we can just Lost Respects one more time and have Annihilate go for a cleanup as well with Shadow Claw. But I don't think that's necessary because with all this damage on the Houndstone, this is pretty much a 1-hit KO with how much damage it does. Focus actually does keep it alive, so maybe it's a good thing we did use Shadow Claw with the Annihilate. And look at how much damage that does. That's practically nothing with that Earthquake because of all of those attack drops. You don't always have to use the Explosion. Sometimes the Houndstone and the Annihilate in the back can also help out. But again, like I said, a lot of counters to this team. Ghost types, Dark types, Priority Protection, Protect, Wide Guard, a lot of counters. But that doesn't mean that this team isn't fun to use though. So hopefully you enjoyed this team, and if you want you can try it out yourself. And if you did enjoy this, I kindly suggest that you like and subscribe, because also I have another team in the works. It is actually a team that revolves around getting +6 attack and +1 speed to your entire party. All 4 Pokemon can get +6 attack instantly. So if you want to see that video as well, I'll be working on that and releasing that soon. So until then, bye bye.